Hey guys, we're about ready to start. My favorite part. We're almost ready to start. Call me. Hey everyone, welcome. You're listening to Six's Pundit Pulse. I'm your host, Kathy Six. You're listening to WJLQ 99.7. You might be one of my Facebook Live friends, or you're streaming at WJLQ.com. No matter how you get to this show, I'm glad you're here. Today is not Tuesday. It's Thursday, February 12th. What do they call that? Friday Eve when we get to Thursdays. Well, anyway, you can call us at 231-900-0997 with your thoughts, comments, or ideas. Please give us a call. We really like that. 231-900-0997. You know, I always like to start the show with some things that are happening around this area. And the reason I like to do that is to give your family or yourselves something to think about that you might want to do. Are you looking for fish fries? I know right now it's important for a lot of people who are practicing Lent to find fish on Fridays. Yes, that includes me too. Good thing I love seafood and fish. Well, if you are practicing no meat on Fridays, the Eagles in many locations are having fish meals on Fridays. In addition, Muskegon Catholic Central also hosts fish fry dinners that start at 4:30. Hey, do you love to play euchre? Yes, euchre, that Michigan game. Well, there's a tournament at Wonderland Distillery tomorrow. Sign-ups start at 5:30. It's $10 to get in. And here's the cool part. The funds raised will be going to the United Way, so you can have some fun and help out a charity. If you can sing, or even if you can't, like me, but still enjoy singing, of course, I should sing only in my car loudly when no one else is in it. If you've ever heard me sing, you're nodding your head right now. But if you do want to sing, you can go to the Marine Tap Room. They have a karaoke night tomorrow night. Now, I know there are lots of places that have them, but if you don't know of one, the Marine Tap Room is an example. I also thought it might be fun to start out with a joke. So they'll be clean jokes. I'll keep them clean. And stop me if you've heard this. No, I'm just kidding. You can't stop me. So my students, when I taught 4th grade, had to learn about parallel lines. Right? So if you don't remember what they are, parallel lines run straight. I always say like a train track with no curves. So here's the joke. Parallel lines have so much in common. It's a shame they'll never meet. I actually told that joke to my 4th graders because then they would remember parallel lines never meet. All right, let's move on. All right, I do want to do a little bit of recapping and then a little bit perhaps of some repeat because I didn't get to it really well on Tuesday. But I want to start with AOC. She just gave me so much to work with for these last 2 shows. It's been a little too much fun. But I did mention when she laughed at Rubio for his comment about the influence of the cowboy being from Spain. So I got her exact words this time. She said, "My favorite part was when he said that American cowboys come from Spain." She laughs, and then she said, "I believe that Mexicans and the descendants of African enslaved peoples would like to have a word on that." Okay. So first of all, I don't know where the African enslaved people came from, but I mentioned on Tuesday, I'll mention it again, it was primarily actually Scottish Irish settlers with Spanish people. Now, if you don't know the history of Spain, I'm sorry, not Spain, but Mexico, you wouldn't understand that Spain actually came and overtook the land of Mexico. You know that the history of the earth is constant conquests. I know we try to pretend like, oh, only America did that to the Native Americans, but it goes back since the beginning of mankind, where different groups in different countries have taken over others and have done a conquest or killing them. But in any case, the interaction of those cultures created the dress that we know of today. And one of the most important things that came for the cowboy, considered today, is a horse, right? The horses are very, very important part of what they do. And the horse is actually not native to the Americas. It's actually an animal from Europe. And the Spanish brought the horse over. Our Native Americans did take advantage, many of them did, and raised some beautiful types of horses, created some different breeds, but they came from the Spanish. And the Spanish, of course, took over, like I said, Mexico, taking out native tribes like the Mayans and the Aztecs, and so on. All right, so, hey, there was no cheating in the elections of 2024, right? Shh, don't tell anyone. Let's keep that on the down low. Oh, I'm just kidding. According to Tiger Droppings and Wall Street Apes on X, did you hear that a fraud lawsuit, filed by Sidney Powell in Georgia details the use of counterfeit ballots? An affidavit filed with Powell's lawsuits reveals that Georgia's counterfeit ballots could be identified by darker watermarks on them. The witnesses say such ballots were printed on different paper, and their watermarks are dark gray as opposed to transparent that was on the real ballots. Get this, almost 100% of counterfeit ballots went to Biden. Well, now you know which side was doing the cheating, because if you were wanting Trump to win, you definitely wouldn't fill those in with Biden's name. If I was a betting person, I wouldn't go with the idea that these Biden fans all just happened to get these fraudulent ballots with the dark gray watermarks, and most of the Trump people didn't. I wouldn't bet on that. Did you hear about a teacher who lost their job? There's lots of teachers that lose their jobs, but this one lost their job, and you're going to find this fascinating, because on their social media, I believe it was their X account, they typed "Go Ice." Why, you might ask? Does that matter? Well, actually, it shouldn't matter. But here was the rationale. There's a high Hispanic community at his school. Huh? What exactly does that have to do with ICE? I don't know. When they were in Minneapolis, it was Somalians. So what does that have to do with... I didn't get it. So the mayor, he's trying to explain it away. He says many children lost a parent due to ICE. First, the word is deported, not lost. They didn't die or get literally lost. They were deported. And words matter. I did say that before. Words do matter. To say they were lost is the wrong verbiage. Anyway, the second part is, if that was the only parents, or even if it was both who were illegal, the child can stay or go. That is an option. And parents get to choose. But let's not forget who put the child in that situation in the first place. If you're illegal, take the buyout now. I suggest you take it. And then take your kids out of the country, back to where you came from, and come back in legally and teach them how to follow the rule of law. Just saying. The ICE are authorities. They are police authorities. And a teacher who supports police authority shouldn't lose their job over it. Now, there has been a GoFundMe for him, and they've raised a lot of money, because it's really hard to switch schools when you've been put under this kind of scrutiny. But really, go ICE? It's kind of like saying, go FBI. or go DHS, or you have a right to say any of those things. And it's on his personal account. By the way, he was teaching young kids who weren't even old enough to have X accounts. They shouldn't have seen his comments in the first place. So, bad on you, school. And Mayor, you cannot explain that away. All right, let's talk about Mississippi, shall we? Currently, there's a lawsuit regarding counting ballots that arrived after Election Day. Wait, I thought there was no cheating. As of now, it looks to be potentially a 5-4 decision that it was illegal to count those ballots after Election Day. We can only hope in the future that Election Day will be the final day to count ballots. Election Day is, and it's it, that's it, we're done. Instead of finding out weeks later. Remember I mentioned the Board of Peace that Trump was getting together, which would include countries outside of NATO? Well, I know at first Trump said that Norway was participating, but Norway has stated they won't be participating, and here's their reasoning. They're concerned it will undermine the UN. I'm not sure we can have too many groups attempting to bring about peace. I mean, I'm not sure that we go, okay, well, we can only have two, only two's allowed, NATO and UN. Isn't it more better when it comes to peace and creating peace? I don't know, just my thoughts. I did find information that showed the mission of the Board of Peace, a preamble and the articles that were under it. And it was an interesting read about what they intend to do. And they are gaining speed. And my personal view again is, what has the UN or NATO done to stop countries from feuding and people dying? Like, I'm sure that Israel's saying, what have you done for me lately? Ukraine might be asking the same thing. So I don't think this Board of Peace is such a bad idea. Well, you may or may not know, Prince Andrew did get arrested. It's not as if I didn't see this coming. He had clear ties to Epstein a long time ago. What's interesting, it wasn't that he was arrested here in the United States. He was actually arrested in his own country in England. He was stripped of his title a while back due to his connection with Epstein, and I think the writing was on the wall at that time. So they stripped his title, and I think they were still allowing him to live in a residence in which they were still paying for it. But I think after this arrest, from what I understand from today, that the king is considering taking that away as well. He says they are cooperating. I heard a commentary today where someone said, it was a person in England, a reporter, who said, this is the worst thing to happen to the monarchy in 400 years. So that's a pretty big statement, to have the king's brother being arrested for something pretty bad. So what did he do besides being buds with Epstein and going to his island? Well, apparently he shared trade information from the United States and England. So he gave England's trade information away to Epstein, who could give it to absolutely anyone he wanted. So he was arrested for that. Now, we do have an international prison transfer program with England. So if they arrest someone on a warrant that we put out, they're supposed to transfer, and vice versa. But it turns out after the arrest, they could have held him up to 36 hours, but they didn't. Just an hour ago, he was released. Though we don't know if he'll be charged at this time, we have no idea what the police are doing over there. We do know the U.S. could still charge him with sexual crimes. Because when Epstein was first arrested, Andrew was one of the first to get noticed. Reminder that Trump was one of the first to report him to the FBI, especially after the incident in Mar-a-Lago, and there are reports out there where he talked to the FBI about him and said, this dude's a problem. But there were pictures of Andrew and evidence that he'd been to Epstein's island many times. In addition, there was a young girl, I remember seeing the news on this and watching a video, who didn't even know who he was, didn't know him from Adam. And picked him out of a lineup and was even able to give descriptions that only one who had been in a sexual situation with him would have known. So I was surprised he wasn't arrested right away. In any case, we're going to see how this plays out. Perhaps England wants to get him in jail before the story gets worse. We'll see. Or before the United States gets a hold of him and that gets out. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to switch up a couple of different topics and talk about some other things, but don't go away, because I have always, as you noticed, hopefully some good stuff for you. And please don't forget to call, comment. I like to see those debates going back and forth. All right, when we come back, we'll have more for you.
When you say call you that time,
I'll do it when we come back. And then make sure that, will you have that clicked and ready so that there's no pause when I'm going over here and
okay, what?
when we're going to go to a commercial. Sorry guys, we're discussing.
Yeah, but it's not watching.
Go to the,
Next.
click on the GOP,
Yeah.
and then, like right now, getting ready to play, just like I just
You just
did.
the box in. Okay. So you want next time will be the GOP commercial, right?
Yep. Well, and then, oh, oh my gosh, I got just a mix-up going on here. Mix-up.
I thought of some. I don't know if you had this about schools, and kids that are walking out to protest ICE, walking out of school, they get suspended. I don't know if you've heard about this. School
No.
papers in Woodbridge, Virginia, over 300 kids got suspended. Mustang Public Schools in Oklahoma, over 100 kids got suspended. Lee County, Florida, dozens got suspended for walking out. And so I don't know if you want to use some word.
Yeah, I'll take that.
I heard today. I only heard about it.
Updating information.
So, what do you got? When you're ready to start, you go back to.
So if
When you get ready to go back talking again now, what do you tip?
so I'll do like that. You click on stop,
Okay.
and then you'll click on the GOP commercial. Just put the check in the box.
So we're ready for next.
And then when I say it's going to be a commercial, hit play. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, so
Let me get my thing ready. Like when I'm dancing? Hey, welcome back to Six's Pundit Pulse. I'm your host, Kathy Six, and I'm glad you're back with us. Whether you're listening on 99.7 or you're listening and streaming at WJLQ.com, or maybe your Facebook friend, either way. And my Facebook friend people, don't forget to put things in the comments. I enjoy seeing, even if you disagree, going back and forth and debating topics and ideas. That's the whole point of news, is the ability to share information. In addition, you can give us a call here at 231-900-0997. Again, that's 231-900-0997. All right. Hey, there was a car explosion. This just came out today. It was in outside the U.S. Embassy in Armenia. Don't know where that's going to lead or why it was even happening. We don't have anything yet. We have a report that there are currently no casualties. So we'll see where that goes. But that was just breaking news, so I don't have much more for you than that. I know there were some comments that came out of the last show about kids and indoctrination. Some people saying, kids aren't being indoctrinated, that's a lie, and others that are saying it's true. Some people actually believe kids are not able to decide if they're trans when they're little, while others believe they can. And some are believing that nothing's happening or they're not being encouraged unless they're being analyzed or treated by a professional. So I went in a little bit deeper. First, children we know are born either girls or boys anatomy, barring any abnormalities. When they're young, they're going to experiment with lots of types of toys and clothes, given those options, and you don't discourage one or the other. Just about every study I looked at, and there are plenty, showed that boys tended, as a large group, tended to go toward the rougher toys, and girls tend to go with the less rough toys. That's as a group. There are always differences. And I'm going to give you an example of myself, because in some ways I like boys things, and in some ways I like girls things. When I was little, I even recall this, I must have been about 3 years old, but I wanted so badly to have this ride-on tractor. You know, they push with your feet. Okay, this was a long time ago, I know, it was in the late 60s, but that's what I wanted. I didn't care much about dolls, I wanted that ride-on tractor. And thankfully I got it for Christmas. There's a picture of me sitting on it, and I'm just happier and all get out. Now, in today's world, would a parent go, oh no, do they identify as a boy? You know, no, I just wanted that tractor. I really did. I remember one time with my friend, and if she listens to this, she might remember, she might not. My friend Carolyn and I were playing one time, and we had our Barbies, and there was a tractor, or it was a truck that could dig holes. And as we were playing, I said, hey, how about I use this tractor to dig a pool for our dolls? I wanted to use the machinery. Did that make me a boy? No. Or trans? No. I just wanted to play with that truck. So what we shouldn't be doing is suggesting in any way that a child is in the wrong body based on what they say or what they do, because, I mean, come on, we know kids when they're little say crazy things. And I did talk about Piaget's theory that doesn't even happen until they're between 7 and 10 years old. The really bright kids at 7, most around 9 or 10. Kids really believe literally when they're 4 and 5 years old that they can grow up to become, you know, Spider-Man. They really believe that. They're not kidding. We think it's cute. Well, let's just let them play things out, right? So, do school districts in the United States indoctrinate kids? Thankfully, mine does not. And I'm so grateful for that. However, did you hear that the U.S. Department of Justice has announced they are investigating into some Michigan schools to determine if they're teaching sexual orientation and gender ideology K through 12. One of those schools who will have to defend themselves in court in these investigations is Godfrey Lee Public Schools, but there are others. And if you're still feeling that kids are not influenced by media and social media, I'm going to give you some stats here in just a second. But I want to tell you about a program called the Wonder Years. Now, if you take just pieces of it, it has a few good things in there that can be used. But if you take it in totality, it actually does talk about gender as early as kindergarten. So if a school adopts the program, doesn't go through it, doesn't take out the parts that do that, it's in there. It directs the teachers to do it. And unfortunately, many teachers feel trapped. Feel that kids, though, aren't influenced. Let's look at some numbers. So we know that media, social media, friends, teachers, etc., they all are influenced. And the way I can explain it is this. We had a 422% increase in trans identification of kids between the ages of 18 and 24. And I say kids because they're still young, since 2014. In less than 12 years, a 422% increase. How is that even possible? For 25 to 34-year-olds, the numbers have quintupled as well. They're nearly 500% higher. And people older than 34, well, they've fluctuated up and down. So it's the young people who are being influenced, the people most on social media. The older people not so much. In fact, it kind of went up and down, kind of fluctuated, and the older groups are all dropping. Consider that age group most influenced by social media. Now think about kids under 18 and how easily they're influenced. Just, use your common sense and think for a second. Is it likely that we had all of these kids that just couldn't come out and say they were transgender? We were coming up short in identifying these kids by 422%, by 500%. We just weren't getting it? Or were they influenced? And I'm going to tell you a story about a young lady who had bulimia and anorexia. She was from the United States and ended up going to Hong Kong. And she was, again, suffering from anorexia and bulimia. And her anorexia got so severe, now it's happened in the early 90s, so severe, she ended up in the streets and she was starving to death. Guess what happened? Hong Kong, who had not even put anything out there about bulimia or anorexia, had not a single case of this problem. Suddenly there was an outbreak, a huge outbreak, in young ladies with anorexia and bulimia, who were perfectly fine before they heard the news, who had normal weight, normal lives, and suddenly stopped eating or started throwing up to lose weight. So Cambridge University did a study on these jumps in numbers I mentioned a minute ago and said a good example of how it can become an adopted health issue was the example of Hong Kong. Because Cambridge did do studies on how people can be influenced by others with disorders. Things like cancer, leukemia, MRSA, etc., they're not disorders that can be created by behaviors or ideas. They just exist in your body or they don't. You can't test to see if someone's a transgender. You can't take a blood test and check. You can't do an x-ray. It's just one of those things you cannot check on. It's the same thing with anorexia and bulimia. You can't take a test. It's a behavioral thing. So, can children be convinced? Absolutely. And quite easily, mind you. If you say nothing and you simply let them be. And then help, especially girls, through the puberty stages, which are the most difficult times to navigate for kids. Let them figure out who they are. I promise they'll come out on the other side having a really good understanding of themselves. But you have to help them navigate those hard parts. When a young girl comes home and she's going through puberty and she doesn't like the sudden influx of boy attention because of her body development, you have to teach her how to handle it. Because otherwise she's going to say, well, then I'm a boy. And that shuts it down. Well, that's not the right option. The option is to teach her how to control it, how to handle it. Let's look at the disproportionate people in Hollywood. Well, let me say this first of all. Some people, parents, kind of think it's cool that their child is different. And look at my child has this, my child. Don't live off your kids like that. Any other way, the same would be with sports. Don't live vicariously through your kids. And don't brag about your kids having some kind of social disorder or body disorder no, that's ridiculous. But we do see a disproportionate amount of people in Hollywood whose children are trans. Why? Because it gets attention. It gets them attention. They like the attention. It's good for their careers. That's my personal opinion, is that it's good for their careers. Otherwise, I don't know, people going to Hollywood, why are you so disproportionately high compared to everybody else? I don't know. I think we're confusing kids. We really are. We're confusing them. Crime and suicide rates have risen exponentially amongst this group, especially suicide. That's enough to tell us clearly right there that we're doing something wrong. But there are some places that are waking up, so I have to give a kudos to NYU Hospital. They have ended their transgender surgeries and treatments for minors. Good on you, NYU. Good job. You have realized this is a big mistake. All right, when I come back, I've got a sad story about animals in crisis, so stay with us for that. We're also going to talk about some of the fuel regimes, some fun local sports, they're back, and a few other things, including the Olympics and what's happening with them. And no, I'm not going to tell you who won and didn't win, but I've got some other interesting things. So don't forget to come back and comment as we go along. All right, let's have a great break, and I'll be back in a few.
Tapping. What do I do? Then just hit?
As soon as that's almost to the end, hit play
Huh?
again. As soon as it's almost to the end, hit play again,
Okay.
and then it'll get to that song.
And then you got to hit stop and go back.
Stop when I flag. Oh, you know what? You know what I did wrong here? Hey guys, I'm going to stop this and come back.